reacting to supsnail. So like I said in part 2, we were going to do 5 more videos. In part 2 we finished the first video, then did the second half of the second part. So we're now doing the second video. Soon passengers were all aboard TWA 800, ready for a peaceful flight to their destination. Soon the fuel truck had came in to refuel the flight. And soon it was time to deboard. Take off. Soon the 747-131 was speeding down the runway and took off, ready for a nice peaceful flight, when all of a sudden the fuel tank exploded due to a circuit, I believe. And I don't know how. Because of the explosion, cracks formed around the cockpit, causing the head to the cockpit of the 747 to break off. The 747 went up and then down into the ocean, into the Atlantic Ocean near JFK Airport. Soon the wing and the tail broke off. Somehow the wing's still there. Soon the cockpit had crashed into the ocean. And then the tail. And then the main fuselage. Unfortunately, nobody survived. And the wreck now lays in the Atlantic Ocean near New York. Next flight. Let's go. Number 2. Turkish Airlines 1951. A 747-800 F2 was ready to load up on 135 occupants on February 25th, 2009 at Ansabub. I don't know what that says. Let me try and read. Istanbul in Turkey. Livery 8 out of 10. Only reason why I say the livery is an 8 out of 10 because if you look at the vertical stabilizer livery, it's wrong. You may be wondering, how is it wrong? Well, look. See what I mean? Stabilizer's supposed to be red. Feels far. Oh, I feel a sneeze coming. But, never mind. Anyway, the 737-800 took off. So the 737-800 took off and was now making its way to its destination. On the way, when it was the plane was now ready to land. I believe the plane was going too slow, and I believe it will happen soon. The aircraft eventually began stalling until until the 737 hit a field, breaking up not that much. Surprisingly, only 9 people lost their life, and a lot of people survived near Amsterdam airport where they were going to land. Star Alliance. Air France. So, Air France and 4590 was ready to take off from Charles de Gaulle Airport on July 2000. But before Air France could take off, a Continental DC-10 had to take off first. Soon, the Continental DC-10 had taken off, but soon the reverse thrust strip had fallen off of DC-10 and landed on the runway where the Air France Concorde would have to take off. If you're wondering what the spare background plane is, it's an Air France A330. Soon, on July 25, 2000, 109 occupants aborted the Air France Concorde at Charles de Gaulle in Paris. Everybody thought it would be a nice flight from France to New York. I believe that's the flight they're going for. Soon, the Concorde was loaded up on its passengers. Only 3 years later, the Concorde would make its final flight. So the Concorde still had some time left in the early 2000s, but it will be retired soon. Right now, 2025, they're all retired. Soon the Concorde was now speeding down the runway, ready to take off to New York, when some of the tires hit the strip from the DC-10, causing a tire to puncture, hitting the fuel tank, causing fuel to leak, and that's how the engine caught fire. Oh, nitrogen monoxide, my engine is burning. What do? I have to return to the airport right now. Some Lego if planes could talk. Oh no, this is very bad. Wait, I am supposed to crash into the airport hotel. But where's the airport hotel? And crashing into the field will be better than crashing into somebody's room. Emergency land. Uh-oh, this is not going to end good for me. Soon, what is supposed to be the airport hotel, the Concorde had crashed onto the airport hotel, exploding. Oh well. Time for the next video. Recreate in real life. Real life plane crashes recreate in Lego. Part 1. For some reason, supsnail made how he made Lego plane crashes recreated part 2 and 3, but never part 1. I wonder why. So our first flight crash will be at Air Florida 90. So on January 13th, 1982, 79 occupants had aborted a 737-222. The 737-200 was now going to take off from Washington Airport. It was a cold winter day. Soon the plane had taken off. But soon, I believe, ice started to form on the wings, causing the aircraft to stall. Nearby was a bridge. Soon the aircraft had hit the bridge and then sank to the cold river, where some years later the same river would have a mid-air collision between the, I believe, a Black Hawk helicopter and the American Eagle Airlines. Soon, there were 74 fatalities, 4 motorists on the bridge, 5 survivors because one guy actually saved passengers before drowning himself at the Potomac River. Alaska 261. On January 31st, 2000, just near the end of the year, just nearly the end of January, a McDonnell Douglas MD-83 in Mexico was loaded up on 88 passengers, ready to do a nice flight. The plane had been flying for a few years, so everybody thought it would be all's well to their destination, when they didn't know that there would be a jack screw failure, which is the part that causes the up and down movements. Nice retractable landing gear. And for the Airfloor delivery, 8 out of 10. Doesn't really look like Airfloor delivery, but for this one, 10 out of 10. Looks pretty good. Soon, the first phase of the horizontal stabilizer failure happened. Not sure if the real horizontal stabilizer went up like that in real life, but if it did, that's accurate. Soon, they were able to get out of the first dive, but then the entire jack screw failed, sending the plane into an unrecoverable dive. The plane flipped upside down, trying to get out of the dive, but still, unfortunately, it failed. Soon, the plane was now heading towards the Pacific Ocean, I believe. And the plane crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Unfortunately, everybody lost their life. Hopefully, you cleaned all the parts up. Soon, Japan Airlines was now landing at Osaka Airport in 1978. Japan Airlines 123. Now, the reason why it's not a 747 here, it's because this is where he was still recreating crashes with a A340. So, this plane you're looking right here, it's an A340. So, that's why he's going to remaster it this summer. Well, he already made the model and made a trailer. So, he's going to remaster Japan Airlines and Tenerife, which is also in this video. Back to the video. So, the plane lands with a tail strike. 7 years later, Boeing forgot about the second row of rivets and never told the plane and crew, I believe. So on August 12, 1985, 524 passengers aboarded the Boeing 747 SR and Japan Airlines 123 took it off from Haneda Airport. It was a beautiful sunset or sunrise as the plane was traveling along to Osaka. That's when the tail broke off. And the plane miraculously, the pilots were able to keep the plane in the air for 32 minutes. They deployed the gears to try and do emergency, but they hit Mount Takamahara and crashed. Initially, there were 50 survivors, but while waiting for help, some of them died due to the fatigue injuries, so that's why there were only 4 survivors, but initially there were 50. And the plane crashed. I'm still survived. 50 people were able to survive that. And then after a few people died due to their injuries, only 4 people survived. So shock how 4 people survived that. West of Tokyo at Mount Takamarahara. Number 2, Air France 447. Here we are with the that set XLR. XL, I forget the set name. So on June 1st, 2009, on the first day of June, 228 passengers at Rio de Janeiro aboarded the Airbus A330. And soon the Airbus A330 had taken off. Livery, 10 out of 10. Japan Airlines, 9 out of 10. And soon the aircraft began stalling due to the autopilot disconnecting and the pilots trying to control their plane themselves, I believe, which caused the plane to crash into the ocean. Nice slow motion splash. And unfortunately, everybody lost their life in the Atlantic Ocean. Tenerife with more A340s. So he's going to remaster this crash soon. So I can't wait to see that. Remaster. KLM Flight 4805 was supposed to land at St. Canary, but due to a terrorist bombing, they had to land at the neighboring island of Tenerife. Soon they were loading up on their passengers, and soon Pan Am 1736. Livery for KLM, 10 out of 10. Livery for Pan Am, 9 out of 10. It would get a perfect 10 if you made the blue stripe across the windows, just like in real life. But, oh well. And you could have made the windows on the KLM also blue. Soon both planes were now loaded up on their passengers. But soon a thick fog had rolled in. ATC instructed the KLM to taxi along the runway, make a turn, and then take off. ATC instructed Pan Am to follow the KLM and exit off of the runway, but because of the fog, the Pan Am could not see what exit they were going, so they were aiming for the third exit. That's when the KLM thought they had takeoff clearance. The KLM tried to dodge the Pan Am, and the Pan Am tried going into the grass. The KLM tried to take off, but they tail-striked, and soon they crashed into the Pan Am, marking the deadliest disaster in aviation history. Alright, next, the 2 final videos. So the second to last video is his emergency landing video. This is where he had the custom noses. This is around the era with the custom noses, only for the 737-200 and the Garuda 737. Soon, Garuda 421 was now flying through a harsh storm on January 16, 2002 in Indonesia. The Boeing 737-300, with 60 occupants on board, was fighting a harsh storm. Soon, both engines encountered a dull flame-out, I believe. Soon, the plane had to land in the Solo River. And 7 years later, an A320 would land in the Hudson River, marking two of the most famous ditching. But, of course, Miracle on the Hudson will be more famous. But soon the 747 had made it ditching in the water. Due to the shallow willow part, the edges got deformed and it got detached from the wing. Air Canada 143. And my favorite Air Canada livery with that nice red stripe. Honestly, I really want Air Canada to bring this livery back. Soon, an Air Canada 767 was loaded up on some passengers in 1983. It was a Dash 200 model, loaded up with 69 occupants. The plane was now ready to take off. Soon the plane was now speeding along the runway. Soon the 767 had taken off, doing a nice peaceful flight. They flew over Lake Winnipeg, that lake is very beautiful. Soon was now flying over the grassy plains of Canada. That's when, suddenly, the plane had run out of fuel due to a fuel error, so they had less fuel than expected. But they were going to make an emergency landing at Gimli. The nose gear was not deployed properly, so during the landing, the nose gear would break off. And that's when the plane made their famous gimme glide. Because of the glider pilot, soon they made it to Gimli in Manitoba. Soon the flight was now ready to make an emergency landing at Gimli. Oh, just look at that drifting. Soon the 767-200 was about to touch down on the Gimli racetrack. And soon, the 767-200 had landed, but the nose gear had broken off due to it not deploying properly. But 767 was able to stop, and everybody was able to evacuate. The 767 ambulance were sent to take the injured people to the hospital. Nice emergency slides. 10 out of 10 livery. 10 out of 10 recreation. Soon, on November 2011, LOT Polish Airlines Flight 16, Boeing 767-300, was ready to do a nice flight to Warsaw with 300 and something passengers on board. The plane had taken off from Newark, NJ, and was making their way back to Poland. But soon, after crossing the Atlantic Ocean, there was a problem. Over the Atlantic Ocean, there was a hydraulic, and something happened with the hydraulics. There was a hydraulic failure because one of the pipes had detached, and soon hydraulic fluid was leaking out. After the plane had made it into Europe, the plane could not deploy the landing gear. Soon the plane had made it into Poland and had to do a belly landing at Warsaw. The gear could not deploy due to the hydraulic failure, so the pilots had to be careful. As they were making it to Warsaw, they could see Warsaw up ahead. And soon, the plane touched down. Sparks flew out of the 767 during the belly landing. But soon, Flight 16 came to a stop. Rescue services were quickly sent to help the injured and survivors. Luckily, there was only one injury. One passenger with one injury. Time for our next flight. Pan Am. On June 28th, 1965, Pan Am flight. Pan American, or Pan Am, was at San Francisco International Airport, ready for a nice flight. It was a Boeing 707-320 Pan Am flight. "153 occupants were boarding the 707. Soon, the Pan Am flight was now taxiing to the runway. Is that a car wheel? Looks like one of those like Hot Wheels car wheels for some reason. Or just a very realistic nose gear. Anyway, the 707 had taxied to the runway, ready to take off. Soon the 707 was speeding down the runway. It was now heading to their destination, Pan Am Flight 843. Soon the plane was heading to their destination. When all of a sudden, when they were approaching Honolulu, Hawaii, something terribly happened. Without warning, one of the 707, some of the 707's wing had soon there was an engine failure, and then soon the 707's wing had broken off. So now the plane only had 3 engines. But somehow the plane was not doing a goal 1907 because 4 engine planes could fly with 3 engines. Apparently because of the 747, which is true. 747 could fly without 3 engines. Soon, the 707 was now going to make an emergency landing at Honolulu. Soon they were descending. They could see Honolulu up ahead. Made a nice emergency landing. It came to a nice stop. Oh no, it was at Travis Air Force Base. No injuries and no fatalities. Final emergency landing of the video. Aloha Airlines Flight 243. A 737-200 working for Aloha Airlines was now loaded up on some passengers ready to head to their destination. On April 28th, 1988, at Hilo International Airport in Hawaii, the 737-200 was waiting to load up on its passengers. Soon, 95 occupants were aboard. Nice Hawaiian Airlines 717. And 10 out of 10 livery. And 10 out of 10 livery and recreation for the Pan Am flight. Soon, the 737-200 was now ready to take off. Soon, the 737-200 was speeding down the runway and taking off. Before boarding, some passengers could see cracks on the plane. Soon, the plane was now making their way across the Pacific Ocean. When all of a sudden, because of those cracks, the roof was going to give way. But they did not know it until when they were now flying over, the roof of the 737-200 broke off, causing a massive decompression, and some of the roof crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Soon, the flight had a massive decompression and had to make it a fast emergency landing. So, this is going to be our final reaction video. We'll react to the final video for a different reaction. So, yeah. So, the 737-200 was now approaching an airport for emergency landing. They were descending to Maui, Hawaii for emergency landing. Soon they could see the runway at Honolulu Airport. I believe that's what that said. And soon the Dash 200 had landed. Oh. And there you go. Those were all the reactions.